Hello YouTube, I'm Charles with Charles Acrylics. Today we're going to be going over this campfire painting. Here are the colors you will need to complete this painting, as well as the brushes I used for this painting. To start off, I'll begin misting my canvas with water. This will allow me to more easily spread the paint throughout the canvas and also prevent color from soaking into the canvas and allowing it to stay on top. I'll be starting off with my number 12 nylon flat brush and mixing primarily pavement black with a little bit of phthalo blue in it to create a very dark blue, or a dark black if you will. I'll be putting this primarily on the top left and bottom sections of the canvas, leaving the top right section empty.
Now as we start working this center section here that we left out, we'll start applying a little more phthalo blue and titanium white to it. Just getting that color here in this area, and then grab our number 16 mop brush and blending it out. So I'll use my flat brush to apply some more paint, and then I'll go back to my mop brush and use that to blend it out to make it a little more soft. So as you see here, I keep going back to my titanium white and my phthalo blue, adding a little more at a time with my flat brush, and then coming back with my mop brush to blend it out to make it appear soft and almost kind of that feather appearance, so it blends smoothly into the dark sky.
Once I have that background sky to where I want it, I'll take my number 8 Bristle Fan Brush with some titanium white and water it down quite a bit, and then I'll smack it against another brush, and the motion of this will allow it to splatter the white on the canvas to give the illusion or appearance of stars.
I'll then continue with that same fan brush, and using my Pavement black, I'll position the fan brush in a vertical position and start mapping out where I want the trunks of these trees to be, and then turning the brush to a horizontal position and primarily using the edge of the fan brush, I'll start mapping out the background of our pine trees.
I'll now be switching to the number 4 Bristle Fan Brush and be using an orange-red color for the paint, and as I'm applying it, I'm trying to give the illusion that the color is reflecting off of these trees from the bottom, so you'll see me changing up the position of how I'm applying this paint. I'll be going back and forth with Scarlet Red, Crimson Red, Primary Yellow, Lemon Yellow, and a Yellow Ochre, using them back and forth and applying a little bit of titanium white into them ever so often to give the appearance of a brighter and brighter reflection of the fire that is going to be at the base of these trees. As I get to the tail end of the illuminating fire on the trees, I'll be using a number 3 Bristle Fan Brush, and I'll be applying a little more titanium white to my yellows, reds, and oranges. Now, one thing I wish I would have done is I wish I wouldn't have added so many highlights through the trees. I think here kind of more is less, or sorry, that less is more. And I think here I kind of overdid it. So keep that in mind when you start applying your highlights, not to overwork it.
Now we will begin working on the fire. I'll be using my number 2 nylon flat brush, and I'll basically be using the same colors that I did for the trees, with using the orange red, crimson red, yellow ochre, primary yellow, and lemon yellow, but I'll be using them in conjunction, basically meaning wet on wet. So I'll be applying first a kind of a dark red, and then going to a lighter and lighter, almost getting down to the white at the center. But I'm not allowing any time for it to dry. I'm working the wet on wet in with all these colors and allowing them to blend, and allowing the colors to show through just by working the wet on wet. Now on the far distant tree, we want to create a very faint highlight from the fire. So we'll mix up a very light green, which we'll be using our blue and yellow, and don't want it to be a bright green, so we'll have a little more blue in that, and just applying it on the left side of the tree using our number 3 Bristle Fan Brush. Now we'll be using our 1/2 inch oval mop brush, And the color I'm using here is a conjunction of colors from a primary yellow to a little bit of crimson red, giving it an orangish color, but applying a little bit of titanium white in. Now I am dry brushing this in, meaning that I'm creating my color and I'm putting very, very little paint on the brush itself and allowing the continual motion of it working back and forth and back and forth and applying heavier and heavier layers. And the base of the fire is going to be the top of the hill that I'm trying to imply. So as I'm dry brushing and moving this color through the canvas, I'll be dry brushing more and more over the area where I want the hill to appear. Now I'll come back over with my number 2 nylon flat brush, and by using our raw umber, I'll start painting in some logs for our fire. Now as I'm applying the highlights for these logs, I'll be using some raw umber and also a little bit of orange red to the top side of these logs to give the highlights of fire dancing off of these logs.
Now as we start applying the smoke to this fire, we're using our 1/2 inch mop brush and we're using a dry brushing technique. If you remember, a dry brushing technique means using very little paint on your brush and brushing it over and over and over again. If you do get a little bit too much paint on there, you can use your finger to smudge the paint. Both work just as good. I always find using a combination of both, of dry brushing and just a little bit of over applying and using your finger to smudge the paint, kind of gives a good appearance of fog, mist, or just that kind of haze that we're looking for. As we start creating the tint, we'll be using our number 2 nylon flat brush. And since this is going to be standing out above the foreground, we'll go ahead and paint this in with a titanium white first and then come back with our primary color we're going to use. Now you'll see here that I've applied the shape of this twice actually, because the first time I laid it out and kind of got the proportions to where I thought looked right, I sat there for a little bit and thought, man, this just really doesn't look right, and so I added a little more length to it or a little more height to it, and it still didn't look quite right. I was like, man, when I was looking at the comparison of the size of the tent versus the size of the fire and just looking at the overall proportion of it, I felt the tent was entirely too small. And then so I went back in and made the tent bigger. So proportion is important
to remember when you're painting various things and various items in your painting. If your proportions aren't right, then the painting itself won't look right. So keep that in mind when you're setting up your tent. As you see the jump in color is because I first done the tent in yellow, and after painting it I realized that it didn't look quite right, especially with the highlights from the fire, so I decided to make the tent a bluish color. Now you can make the color of the tent whatever color you like, but I just chose blue here.
and I'll be using my flat brush to apply the color to this. Remember, since the face of the tent is facing the fire, you want that to be the lightest point and the back part of the tent to be the darkest point. And then you can use your nylon script brush to apply the highlights to the edge of the tent. Well, that just about covers it here for this campfire painting. I hope this helped you out, and if you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of newly uploaded videos. And as always, God bless and happy painting.